So if your dog, bless his little soul, starts barking and coughing in the world, don't be upset because we don't look for perfection here. We're just doing the best we can. Look, I just
Well,
knocked into my microphone even. We're off to a good start.
yes, and it's also so hard to find lighting in this house. So I was trying to find a spot where you could actually see my face and it not look like I was in a dungeon.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm sure the listeners don't care, but in my last office when I started the podcast, there was a window right in front of me, and it was amazing. Like just all this beautiful natural light, and looking out into the trees, and yeah, in my neighbor's backyards. But yeah, it's definitely not the same when the side lighting, and I have different lamps and stuff. It's always something. Well, welcome to the Perinatal Podcast, Stevie.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I like to sometimes ask people how did we meet?
Well, I think we met before my birthday at least once.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, we were walking up to my birthday party that one of my best friends was throwing for me, and you strolled down the alley, and we were kind of dressed the same, and that's how we knew that we were at the same party.
Yes,
So,
I absolutely 100% I saw your dress and was like, that is the theme of this party. Are you going? And then you're like, yes, I am Stevie. Hello.
yep.
Yes, perfect. I love it. I love a connection and a friend of a friend and all of that. Well, yeah, so if you wouldn't mind, give the listeners a little background on you. Tell us about you.
Oh goodness. That's such a
Loaded question, where to begin?
yes. Well, I don't want to start too far back because we don't have enough time for all of that. But
Oh, Lord.
I mean, single mom.
Mhm.
I have an almost 3-year old, and she is just a wildfire ball of magic that bounces around this house nonstop. And before being a mom, it's hard to even kind of imagine like who I was because it
Mm.
feels like such a lifetime ago.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm kind of a nerd. I've always kind of been a nerd. I love books. I love reading. I love, my alone time. And
Mhm.
I have a lot of friends and acquaintances. I have a very small group of close friends that keep
Mhm.
me, stable and have
Yeah.
helped me grow into who I am now.
Mhm.
I work in a corporate setting
Mhm.
and not anything like I thought it was going to be. For
Yeah.
for me, at least with my personality, I mean, I love my job, but
Mhm.
it's very different from how I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Um, I don't really do a whole lot, to be honest. I'm kind of a homebody, so
Yeah.
I I think if you have questions, it would be easier for me to
No,
answer.
totally.
Only because
Yeah.
like
Well, now
I
I'm curious. Honestly, this wasn't even part of the topic of our conversation today, but now I'm just like the therapist in me is like, so let's explore the miracle question. And if you
I
wouldn't
would love that.
ah,
Because I'm like I had no idea. I realized like how boring I kind of am,
oh,
but only because like now being a mom and my kid being
mhm,
so energized and just, I
mhm,
want her to like be wild and free. My life is shifted.
mhm.
And so everything kind of revolves around
Yeah,
making
it's
me
interesting. Well, I
thriving.
do want to come back to sorry, I have something in my eye. I apologize for those of you who are watching me on the YouTube channel and those of you who are listening on podcast are like, we don't know what you're talking about, Meg. So yeah, I do want to come back to the your career piece because I just have a couple questions there. But yeah, it was my second guest ever on the show. Our topic was motherhood and identity and how like to various levels of degrees anyway we struggle with identity as just a human, whether you have kids or not, whether you have a partner or not, whatever, if you have a job or not, or school or any of that, and then throw another tiny human for whom you are solely responsible into the mix.
For keeping alive.
Right. Somebody sent me a meme today of I can't remember the picture, but it was just kind of like a person like with their coffee cup looking out into the world of like, do you ever stop and wonder that like there are people that you're like actually responsible for keeping alive? Like
Yeah,
trippy, huh?
it really is. It is so trippy.
But that's so difficult to be if you're a homebody because you're a homebody and you're a home, and that's the thing too, we grow and evolve. Like
Mhm.
I would say that a number of us, and I can't speak for the world, but I feel like the more and more people I speak to, I think globally, a number of us after the pandemic have become more introverted insofar as the proper definition of gain your energy by being alone. I think
Mhm.
some of us who were stuck in quarantine. Stuck is a really inappropriate term. What privilege to have been safe and secure and whatever. But with people, you're kind of like, I just need some alone time. Now, some people who are listening are like, I was alone during quarantine and all I want to do is be around people. So also that. But like myself, I can definitely speak for me. Like like that's almost entirely how I recharged was being out and going and doing and going. But I also had an 8-month-old when quarantine started. So, like, is that because I now have children and I'm more exhausted and I just want to be alone and being touched out's a real thing? And mama is a real thing.
Mhm.
I think that there are mitigating factors for all of it, but it's just interesting for us to watch and recognize, like, I like to be a homebody because I like to be a homebody, or I wasn't a homebody before, but I am now because I just want to sit and snuggle with my almost 3 year old, or all of those things. Like, who was I before? What was I doing before? The joke from Friends that I love to reference when we're talking about like bowel movements or PTA boo bash flyers or whatever. I'm like, what did we used to talk about?
Yeah. What was there before kids? I don't,
Yeah.
I've never talked about poop so much in my life. Like
Oh, yeah.
you, the things that, yeah, your energy it just shifts
Yeah.
completely.
It
And yeah,
does. And
trying not to lose yourself in that energy is so difficult.
there it is. There it
So
is right there.
difficult. Hmm.
Yeah. Of being again, I don't know how self-reflective some of us were to begin with. So maybe before we had children, we didn't really have time to even think about some of the things. We were just kind of going and doing and being. And it was great because we had these groups of friends who were inviting us to do things. And like, my answer is yes, or my answer is no, or what like I'm off and I'm going and I'm doing. And so I've talked about like the idea of kind of grieving the loss of some of those things. Like my
Hmm.
spouse and I used to be on a shuffleboard team every Wednesday at a bar that was walkable from our house in Houston. And like while I wouldn't give up my children to be able to go do that, like I'm also allowed to be sad that that's not no
Right.
longer a part of my life.
Hmm.
And it can be helpful for us like in therapy or journaling or just to be, reflective and introspective. I almost said respective. That was some weird amalgam of the two words, like being reflective of like, where am I now? Are there sticking places? Are there things that I am grieving that I, again, wouldn't give up what I have for, but I'm also allowed to be upset about?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a version of you that no longer exists.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's grieving that part of yourself that's no longer connected to who you are in the present
Mm-hmm.
and being able to have those memories and look back on those times while, yeah, sometimes it's, man, I sure do miss being able to just go to the store and come home whenever I want, or go out and meet up with somebody and come home whenever I want.
Yeah.
The life no longer serves the purpose that you have as a
Mm.
mom, I
Mm.
feel. And so you have to let that part of yourself go.
Mm-hmm.
And so grieving the loss of not only that version of yourself, but now every other version of yourself that's come before that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's your entire identity.
Mm-hmm.
I think my situation's just a tad different because um, had to, not had to, I was very blessed with the opportunity to move back home with my parents while I
Mm.
was going through all of the stuff I'm sure we'll touch on.
Well, all the
Yeah,
things to which we are approaching.
yes. But also being fortunate enough to live back in this house. And I say that with the most respect because I do. I love and I appreciate and
Yeah.
had the best childhood. Like I love my parents. But coming back in as a mom now, and I'm reliving my teenage years
Mm-hmm.
as a 33-year-old
Mm-hmm.
single mother
Mm-hmm.
and having to now figure out what in those dynamics didn't work
Mm-hmm.
for me
Mm-hmm.
and how I can look onto those dynamics and shift that energy into a way that is more beneficial and enlightening for
Mm-hmm.
all of the future generations to say, hey, we have already tried this. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't work. So now let's try something else. Let's see if we can do better.
Mm-hmm.
And the push and pull from, obviously not wanting to step into a space that's not mine or
Mm-hmm.
invade a space that's not mine, but that's also been told is mine from the time I was moved in this house when I was like 5. And so it's just that whole shift from being those versions of yourself and now seeing what didn't work and trying to change what didn't work into a way that does without any kind of guideline or guidebook or rule book. There's no rule book. They don't tell you that. There's no rule book. And for somebody that's ADHD, like I need a rule book.
Yes.
I need those steps. And I'm so sorry. I went off on a tangent. I kind of forgot what
No, it's
started.
okay. I actually love that
Um,
too, though, because so many of my listeners are here because I also specialize in ADHD and just
oh my God.
distractibility globally. Even if I diagnosed in 1994 over here, my spouse was diagnosed in 91, so like first grade for him and fourth for me. And so obviously we know it's genetic. So I just,
My mom didn't believe in all of that. So I
yeah,
got diagnosed in college on my own.
it is.
And it
We
was
could
life
literally just not talk
changer.
about anything else but this for the rest of the show of like, oh, but girls don't have ADHD.
Oh,
Like
the
girls are
worst.
not neurodivergent in any way. Girls don't have autism. Like,
Oh, yeah, it doesn't exist.
yeah, I can't tell you. I am such an anomaly.
Mhm.
Bless my parents for being, and I don't know if maybe they didn't really have much of a choice. I was always all A's and to be in conduct, all A's and to be in conduct. And at some point, I think the teachers were just like, make her shut up. Not really, but
I had the in, it was like
mhm.
whatever, not up to standard in
uh,
excessive talking. It was always, everything was always an A. And that
yeah,
was the one thing they couldn't give me a grade on because I, again, couldn't shut up in class. Like,
yeah, and it's really tough, and it's exciting now. I'm so Stevie, like I'm obsessed with you, and where I'm just gonna like call me every 5 minutes. But I'm really excited, and also my daughter's almost 3.5, so I'm just play dates aplenty. But
yes.
I'm so excited to be able to be in a space to be able to commune with people of like when we're recognizing our kids, if there are issues. Like I just had parent teacher for my 5-year-old who's in kindergarten, and I told his teacher, she was talking like he struggles with like silly versus serious. Like when we're sitting here, it's okay to be silly, but when we're at the like carpet time is silly time and table time is serious time. And like so I'm asking her, like, what can we do? Can I sit him in a wobble chair? That's not air quotes fair to the other kids, but like fidgets I have to imagine are a terrible idea in a kindergarten classroom. She's like, yeah, they're mostly just distracting. So she allows him, he can like let her know, and they have big windows and like go take a couple laps around the hallway. And it's just nice now that there is, I mean, we've got so much farther to go, so much further to go in normalizing mental wellness and mental health and not decreasing the stigma. But we've also come so far where you and I can be talking like, hey, do you know she did this? Yeah, I did that. What are you doing with
Mhm.
this? Who you do? There's so many more spaces that we're able to have that because absolutely for us. And again, I'm so lucky to be able to have been like, that's what this is, and not to blame it, but then to at least have an understanding of that. Whereas so many other people, like what you're describing of not finding out till college, how hard that would be to like try to navigate what's going on and why can't I not get this N? Why can I not get this N? Like what's going on? And
I'll be real honest. I did not care.
oh, I
I
love that.
I was the type as a kid that, and it worked out well for me until college. I was the kid that got their work done as fast as they could so I could talk to people. And so I
Mhm.
could distract. And that was the hardest thing for me is I couldn't understand as a kid, well, why is it so hard for
Mhm.
my friends?
Mm.
Because I was very fortunate to have a
Mhm.
brain that was like, oh, this is easy. I love
Yeah.
learning.
Mhm.
That's my jam.
Yeah.
My major was in English and I love writing. And
Yeah.
that's, it just all flows into one. But yeah, as a kid and all throughout high school, it came easy for me school
Mhm.
wise, but it was the building relationships that was hard
Mm.
as far as being able to hold space for people
Mm.
and
Mhm.
not understanding why,
Yeah.
like if I said like, hey, we're friends, I automatically assume we're friends.
Mhm.
And I didn't pick up on those tiny social cues that people talk about.
Mhm.
And so that's what was really difficult for me because my brain was always
Hmm.
moving that I just, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. I
Yeah.
assume we're good unless you say otherwise. Like,
Mhm.
so it was the relationships that was hard for me in school
Yeah. And that's,
instead of,
yeah, and that's absolutely, also a thing where to just understand, like, first of all, I like being your most authentic and beautiful self, and you're exactly who you need to be, and you'll find the people who want to be around you. But that's hard because some of the people might not be the people who were at your high school.
exactly.
So it'll be nice just for us again to be able to talk to our kids and say, this is not it forever, and be yourself. And let's talk about taking a pause and
Mhm.
letting things breathe and letting other people have space and not listening to a person's story just so you can then get into your story, which is
Respond.
a big
Mhm.
thing we do with ADHDers, and like
Mhm.
one-upping stories and stuff. And like those are the kind of things that we will be able to talk about. And then the other pieces of just like, that's just who you are, and who you are is amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. And you'll always find your tribe. You just, if you
Hmm.
vibe with who you are inside and obviously, and that comes with not to say like you still have to self-reflect and you still have to do the
Yes.
work. You still have to want to improve and be better and be reflective to other people's emotions and how your interaction with people changes them. And
Hmm.
do you want that change to be for the good or the better or
Hmm.
for the good or the worse?
Hmm.
It's our I think ADHD people specifically, I think our impact on people is to help kind of shift those vibrations from a negative to a positive because we are able to shift so quickly
Hmm.
and move from, topic to topic and energy to energy. And like
Yeah.
if you're moving so quickly, you don't really have the time to hold the
Hmm.
negative space, but you can help them propel that negative into a positive.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't think I've ever like conceptualized that, and I love it. And I'm like, yes, yes, that's exactly right. Of like, I think of my girlfriend and my spouse and I are just like to follow a conversation between the three of us. Bless her, deeply neurotypical PhD engineer spouse
The
who will just
grounder.
sometimes, she'll just sometimes kind of be like, go ahead, guys. Like I don't. It's not on purpose, and we articulate it. We talk about it. We try to be aware of it. But it is to watch that, and you're right. Like we could be so angry about some political topic, just like ready to just like explode, and then somebody says something that makes me think of something else, and then we're laughing, cackling
Mhm.
about a joke or something else, and then we're talking about like it's a really interesting thing. And
Mhm.
as soon as you were saying it, that came to mind. But I've never really conceptualized that before. I love that very much. Like just yeah, we are chaotic and twirly, and that's okay.
Yes, I have been. I mean, the thing that I write down all the time is beautiful chaos because it really is. Like, it's just, there's beauty in chaos. You just have to learn to kind of
Mhm.
ride the wave and go with the flow a bit and let go of
Mhm.
control and, not
Mhm.
obviously, I say that in a different sense than
Yeah.
probably what I mean by it. But not like of control completely.
Oh,
Still
I
hold,
always love to say control. Ha ha.
still hold on to the raft,
Yes.
Don't,
Yes.
don't let go all the way yet.
Well,
But
and that's the thing that I talk about with a lot of people is like we can't be a bull in an antique shop through other people's lives. So while we do need to be our most authentic selves, we do need to be us. We do not want to be in the business of changing ourselves to accommodate other people. We
right,
also can't just be like, well, I'm loud and I'm annoying and you're just gonna have to get over it and da 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 da. Then that's, well,
exactly.
you can certainly do that and let me know how that works out for you in those relationships. So
Right. It's just not going
it's
to
a
work for
balance
me.
of your mind works differently than other people's, and that's okay. And here are a couple things to be aware of when you're doing it, that self-awareness piece, so that you are maintaining those relationships and you're being kind. But yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a journey. So you were talking about like the interesting, because I really want to come back to these boundaries with your parents and living with your parents, because a lot of people struggle when they become a parent. Like
Yeah.
even if you're not living in the space, which we're going to get to that, like even if you're not living in that
Mhm.
space,
It's already
it's so
hard.
hard because
Yes.
everyone wants to have an opinion. Everyone wants to tell you about which diapers or what sleep training or don't sleep train or this or that or just wait or at least. And it's so interesting as a new parent. Again, your whole identity has shifted in such a magnificent and chaotic way that you're trying to figure out who you are while also, most importantly, keeping this baby alive, but also navigating these relationships that are no longer like all of your relationships change when you become a parent in
Mhm.
certain ways.
Everything changes, and it should change.
So it's interesting. I'm curious, and like, and maybe you already have an answer to this question, or maybe you want to just lump it all into compounding that with the idea of moving in with your parents. Of like, I don't know your parents,
Mhm.
and we're not here to call out your parents. This isn't a therapy session, but
I
like,
mean, it can be.
but like,
I'm just
already the idea of mother becoming grandmother
Mhm.
again, of like, well, that's not how we did it when I was a kid, or da da da, or when you were a baby, and then to be under their roof. That's a whole like that's a compounding
And
dynamic.
I work from home.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
As she picks up the tea, go ahead.
I have literally, let me get some,
Yeah.
um,
Well, ADHD medications cause dry mouth. So if anybody's ever noticed how much I drink on this show, it's because I get dry mouth from my Vyvanse. You're welcome. Go
I have tried to stop taking my ADHD medication and just substitute it for things like green tea and coffee and, whatnot. But, um, I, I think ADHD medication is amazing, like for our brains,
It is spectacular.
the relief that it can give.
It's
But
amazing.
anyway, so yeah, so living within this environment with my parents, and like I said, my mom was a single, I haven't said this, my mom was a single mom until I was 4. And
Hmm.
then my mom and my stepdad have been together ever since. He adopted me when I was an adult. That's my dad.
Sure.
And so before that, I was very blessed to still have like a father figure in my life. And I think
Hmm.
that really helped. But never really having that structure of mom and dad always in the household, but there being such a big push for it,
Hmm.
to watch that growing up and then to see the results of that as a healed from trauma to a certain extent mother in her 30s, like trying to navigate now this water of what do I want to show my child as a healthy dynamic and a healthy relationship? And what do I want to put those pressures on? But seeing a dynamic that I thought was healthy as a child, and not to say that it's completely unhealthy, but there are a lot of things that I personally do not plan on carrying forward.
Yes.
Um,
Coming from a place of, I would like to
of,
make choices based on
of love.
information, not judgment.
Exactly. It's my choice is strictly from love for our future generations. Like I just want things to be different. I think things can be different. I know things can be different. Like it has to be. There has to be a better alternative to a lot of things
Hmm.
that I feel like we are shown in our family dynamics within our households growing up. And that's such an important part of your brain development and the things that you pick up on and the thing and how you regulate and you handle those emotions without holding them in and like self imploding.
Hmm.
Like there, the lack of mental health studies or resources
Hmm.
during the 90s
Yeah.
really impacted not only us as kids,
Hmm.
but our parents. Like,
Hmm.
I fully believe that my ADHD is genetic. I mean, I see, both sides of my family. I know how their brains interact. I'm very observant as a person, but seeing it and being like, wow, so this is what it all stems from, and trying to have that empathy and trying to move forward, knowing that as much as you love your parents and you want them to be better for themselves,
Uh-huh.
not all of our parents are capable
Hmm.
of being anything different than who they are. And that's a really hard pill to swallow because
It,
you want them to be better for them. And it's just, you can't continue to try to force your parents to see your mindset
hmm.
because they, at least in my personal situation, they still view me as their kid. They don't view
Right.
me as a mom
Yeah.
or as their equal. I don't think I will ever
Hmm.
be seen as their equal. And that's really hard for me.
Hmm.
I would say the hardest part about living in the house
Yeah.
is
That,
not being seen as an equal because I do pay them rent. Don't get me wrong. Like, I pay to live here. I don't live here for free. I know a lot of people would have different thoughts on that and be like, I can't believe your mom is making you pay to live there. And that's fine, but
I
I
bet
want
that's probably a good emotional boundary for you.
it is.
It probably
It's
is
a big
like,
thing for me.
I need to do this to make
Right.
this make
Right.
me feel comfortable here.
And it also allowed me at the time to say, okay, I need to make sure I can afford to pay rent somewhere.
Absolutely.
Because this, I mean, just as expecting to not have to do it by myself to having to do it by myself,
Sure.
just financially, I was like, oh man, I need a safety net of some sort in case I crash land on this.
Hmm.
But luckily for me, it's never been a big deal. Like I saw it the same way that you kind of see it. It is a boundary. That's no, I pay to live here. I'm trying to
Right.
pull weight in other ways. And if that's a way that I can contribute that, then great.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, my own space would be
Yes.
incredible. And then
Yes.
having to work from home and distinguish between
Mm.
mom 24/7 and yes, my mother retired early to help me because she said, she's like, I know you're going to need help
Oh,
because
wow.
my daughter started walking at 8 months. And I was just not prepared. And when I say walking, she started running. She started full on sprinting at like,
I don't want you to feel othered right now, but I am having such an emotional reaction to that story. Oh my gosh. Mine started at 10
I wasn't
months. My
ready.
son, I can't imagine 2 more months.
Oh my gosh.
Was she just constantly covered in bruises? Just
Oh,
constantly?
her two front teeth are chipped. I mean, she has like a scar above her eye. She had, I mean, all this, and it would happen. It always happened right before I was taking her to the doctor. I'm like, okay, we're going to the doctor tomorrow. We don't have any bruises yet. Do I need to wrap you in bubble wrap? Like, what do I need to do? And something tragic would happen. And then I'd end up having to take her into the doctor the next day. And I'm like, Dr. Luwani, I swear to God, like,
Well, the good news is,
yeah.
I used to have to do trainings when I worked at a psych hospital for abuse, neglect, and exploitation, and it's very clear. Not very rarely is any one thing all one thing. Actually, I had a client yesterday say that I need to make merch. She was like, "I'd buy that," because I say very rarely is any one thing all one thing, like all the time, and like that. And if it were easy, you'd already be doing it. I'm like, I need a neon back here, so I could just like click and turn it on and be like, "What do we say?" What anyway? But
Yep.
like, almost, let's not use the word always anyway, very frequently it is obvious to a medical professional or provider what is an 8-month old, by the way, running into a coffee table and a child having been hands been put on. So that, but it doesn't,
No, I
so
know. I know that. But
procedurally
yeah.
is that, emotionally as a new parent, that all goes
Oh,
out the
it's
window. I don't beat
devastating.
my kid, I promise. Like,
Devastating. Well, because I already have cried about it. I've already had like a mini heart attack about it. Like, I just always try to convey, I'm like, look, I've already had a breakdown. This happens every
yes,
time. Like, I just feel like I'm being tested.
yeah, it does not.
Me.
It does, the rational mind goes out the window.
Completely.
And it's so, I don't know how your pediatrician, they would, for mine, they'd be like, yeah, Meg, we know. We know he's run, we know.
Mhm. Her
But for me,
pediatrician.
I'm like, no, but you don't. Do you know though? Do you know?
I'm like, can you see it? Can you see it all over my face? Am I alive? Am I breathing?
Oh my
I'm breathing
gosh.
now.
But yeah. And so I think that's the thing that in general of like, I mean, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, so I'm not a grandmother, so I don't know. But having your mother, my grandmother is still alive, and like we don't live near them, so I'm blessed in a way of like we call them every night, which is very sweet for FaceTime, but they don't see my day-to-day operations generally, so I don't have that like intrusive, you're doing it wrong.
Mhm.
But I think that's an ongoing thing for so many of us who've become parents. When our parents, and I hold space for that. I saw a movie recently, and one of the characters said, like, the parent is always the parent and the child is always the child. And it's like, I hold space for that. There is some space. If, like, you're always going to be my baby, and I'm always going to be protective of you, and I'm always going to want the best for you. So, but what does that look like in terms of our interactions? Because you may be my parent, but I am a parent and I need to be able to parent in the way that is the most authentic to me. So how
Exactly.
do we hold space for that? What those two things have to be equal at the same time. How are we self-aware together and navigate that?
I I mean, I have not figured that out yet, only because I feel like I'm the only one who's self-aware within the dynamic. And
Mhm.
I had to take a step back from how much I love and care and adore my mother,
Mhm.
to draw a boundary for myself to say that even though I have that love for her and I know that she did her best, I don't have to tolerate being treated in a way that is not with my best interest in mind or my child's best interest in mind, as far as the emotional damage that can come with actions that,
Mhm.
whether you decide to be aware of those actions or not, is completely your choice.
Mhm.
Um, but being able to separate that, it's been a struggle. It's been a real struggle. And especially I feel like, because again, when you're in it, there's really, I try to have time for self-reflection throughout my day, but there's not an easy way to do anything with a parent that you realize is not emotionally available or receptive to things that bother you as a person. I
Mhm.
mean, it just, I would love some advice if anybody has advice on that, because I have no idea.
I was going to say, when you
I'm
figure that
winging it.
out, you go start your own podcast, you write your books, you make your billions of dollars, because when you figure that out, the world is waiting for that answer. Of
I
course,
will
not for you.
say, I will say the positive from all of it has been, it really has brought my relationship to God
Mm.
back.
Mm.
Because for a long time I always believed in everything. I still do.
Mm.
I believe that if you can imagine it, it exists.
Mm.
I'm
Sure.
very open-minded when it comes to that. I think that there are a lot of things that we will never be able to comprehend with
Mhm.
the capacity that our brains have for the unknown.
Sure.
Um, but being in a situation where I am having to learn how to have more grace and more patience and more kindness, and taking all of the things that are thrown at me and said towards, not thrown at me literally, but thrown my way and said
Yeah.
towards me, um, and trying to take those negative, what I view as negative energies, negative feelings, negative emotions, and trying to like alchemize that in a way that God would say, here's how you turn it to light.
Hmm.
How can we take what somebody that you love and care about is saying to you that's intended to hurt your feelings,
Uh-huh.
and how can we take that with love and grace and forgiveness and all of those things, and how can we take it and shoot it back to them in light,
Hmm.
and just say, I understand that what you're saying isn't meant to hurt me in the way that you're saying it, but
Hmm.
this is the way it's being taken. And, I love you and I forgive you for that.
Yeah.
So let's figure out how we can communicate in a different way to make things better.
Yeah.
Not
So
have to be
really,
this push and pull.
yeah. I mean, definitely reconnecting with a higher power can
Mhm.
be so helpful for so many people. Spirituality is so meaningful and important in so many people's lives. And especially like you're saying, when you felt like you had stepped away from that in some capacity, and to be able
I
to get
mean,
back to that's been helpful for you.
I say stepped away. I feel like I felt lost for a long time.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
I always felt very out of sorts with
Hmm.
growing up. I've always just been a little different.
Hmm.
Um, and I say that in the best way possible. Obviously I love how my brain works. I think it's fascinating.
It's your superpower. Yes.
Yes, yes. But I grew up Catholic.
Hmm.
And so I can just remember always as a kid being like, but why? Like I would ask these questions and nobody could give me any real answer. And
Yeah.
so that kind of shifted me to being more, not more research minded. Like I wanted to see the research on it.
Hmm.
And then shifting that into, obviously going to college and trying to open my mindset, and then going through the things that I've been through in the past 20 years that were meant to break people Like, I have to believe in something good.
Mhm.
There's got to be a way out of this. Like, not
Yeah.
everyone is that way. And so it's always come back to God.
Hmm.
And I just think that's really beautiful
Yeah.
to
That's
be in
so
a setting
great.
that's supposed to break you. And it's like, no, I think I want to make this pretty.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's just been interesting. I'm thinking back to what you're saying about like that people like can people change? People can change if they want to change, but a lot of people don't really feel like they want to change. And I feel I have this conversation so much with my clients right now, and then like in my own personal life with my friends. Like we can, but we don't need to get into like the politics of it in specificity, but just in such a divided country and world we are realizing that there are some relationships that no longer serve us.
Mhm.
And even what you're talking about, like politics fully aside, just as a parent, like you were great in this setting and situation, and now we are at odds in my parenting journey. And that's a hard thing because I think a lot of people think of un like removing themselves in certain ways from certain relationships feels like a failure. Or most importantly, of course, we talked about earlier, the grief process, like of being so disappointed by that, of upset, of like, this is a person that has been so important in my life for so long and is no longer able to do that, missing them, or just the shock factor of all of that. And it's really is an ongoing issue for so many people because we are all, I don't know, we're all looking for the thing that makes the most sense to us. And some people feel really passionate and I'll say entitled to, I want to say it's something more professional, but like people feel entitled to shove it down our throats
Mhm.
that we're wrong and they're right. And that does ruin a relationship, can ruin a relationship, doesn't, but can. And when we are just diametrically opposed in things that are very important to us,
Mhm.
not like agree to disagree. It's like, no, I don't think that that makes a person a good person when they believe that or say that to me or treat me that way. And you're doing that. So maybe we just aren't what we used to be, and that's hard.
Mhm. It is. It's a very hard dynamic to try to re-navigate through, especially as a parent to anybody,
Mhm.
really, but mostly to your own parent. It's like you have taught me that you love me and that you support me all throughout my life. So, like, what's the problem? Like,
Mhm.
why is it now that that pushback is happening? But that's kind of where I think we can either choose to separate or my alternative, because I know that I don't want to do that because there are good things that come from that relationship. I just know that the boundary for us is that we can't live
Mhm.
within the same walls. Um,
Right.
so we actually need physical space.
Mhm.
But as far as like our emotional connection from mother to daughter, I feel like I don't have a lot to go on. And it's very hard to navigate waters that you're unfamiliar with,
Mhm.
especially when you're on a completely different river than the mother who taught you.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, well, wait. So
Yeah.
I need you. I need some guidance. And now it's I'm still kind of doing it by myself. Like I'm still solo paddling down that river and I'm like, I don't know where I'm doing. I'm winging it.
Mhm.
Just trying to roll through it and get the research that I can from all the resources that luckily are available to us
Mhm.
now that our mothers didn't have.
But also, there are too many resources out there. I mean, I don't know if
Yes.
you're aware that the Surgeon General literally just released a black box warning about parenting and the stress levels. So the same as on a pack of cigarettes, there's a black box warning of like, this is going to kill you. It's not, that was really dramatic. That's not what he was saying about parenting. But it's interesting because I've been making the joke of like, I'm sure the boomer generation thinks that we're a bunch of snowflakes. But
Mhm.
my thought on that is, um, you know, if you're at the grocery, if you were at the grocery or we in the 90s and we wander off versus now if one of our children wanders off, like, oh, I'm reaching up at this top shelf trying to grab something and she's gone. I can't speak for every person, not every single thing, but like back in the day, you could just like kind of send your kids over to the toy area at the store.
Mhm. And nobody would have to worry about them being kidnapped for child
And
trafficking.
Adam
Like,
Walsh, may he rest, we do know that those things did happen, but it just didn't feel so
mhm,
pervasive as a week, 2 weeks ago, somebody was trying to play hockey in front of their yard and the ring camera caught somebody trying to take the kids. Like
mhm,
the overabundance of information for us is so crippling. So in the same exact situation, in a controlled environment, your mom has you at the grocery, you have your kid at the grocery, you turn around and they're gone. Just immediately, our cortisol levels are different
mhm.
here. Your mom, and I'm not speaking, I'm not there, but like a 90s mom, let's say, may have been like, oh, there she goes
Yeah,
again, silly girl. All right, well, I'll make
yeah.
finish.
I'll find her at the door.
We are immediately like checking in our air tags that we've planted in their shoes, and we're running around and like, oh, we're not yelling their name, but we're hollering what they look like and how tall they are and what they were wearing, and like we know all of this stuff because we know all of it, and it's all there. And some of these
Mhm.
things that are going on right now, the pressures and everything, are so great that our Surgeon General literally was like, just a heads up, everybody, like it was hard then,
Yeah,
only getting harder. Okay, cool.
yes. The mental emotional load for sure has increased significantly for parents between now and, you know, the 80s and 90s. Like, I couldn't imagine how amazing and fun it would have been to have grown up during that time.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like, just to be able to go outside and go anywhere you wanted and without a real true fear of there being a predator on every corner.
mhm,
It's a completely different type of fear that's been
mhm,
implanted into our generations now
mhm.
that we're going to have to figure out a solution for, or unfortunately, we're going to have to continue to live with it.
Well, and also too, even just I see, I'm literally in talks with Transportation Public Works, bless the city of Fort Worth, to get speed regulations in this neighborhood because we live in a new build, and it's just I see so many people during school hours even, but anytime, just driving on their phone
Mm-mm.
in my neighborhood. And that's what I tell my kids because I want them to be free and run. Like, yeah, go run to the end, but make sure you stop. Don't step on the bubbles. Like what? But
Mhm. They have to be
all
aware.
yeah, but all it takes is one person not paying attention on their phone, popping a curb and
Mhm.
taking out my kids. So then I have to have them glued at my hip. Not that I could have protected them from a car, but like,
Yes, circumstances would have been vastly different.
right. So I just, it is one of those things where you're just, I mean, my girlfriend, what privilege I can walk my kid to school. And so she came over and we walked the kids. And I was like, I think 75% of our discussion in the 20 minutes we were together, 25 minutes, was about the traffic patterns in our neighborhood and how stressful it is and how we're scared and we're thinking about all the time. We can't cross here because there's no crosswalk. There's a turn and blah.
Dirt roads sound real nice right about now.
So yeah,
It's-
it's just,
There's so many people. There's so many people.
mhm. Yeah. And so figuring out how we want to navigate those boundaries, how to articulate those boundaries. I actually saw a Mel Robbins, um, a clip from one of her shows where, and I'm not calling anybody out there narcissist capital N diagnosing, but I think that this does actually apply for people. The same as I like talk about ADHD globally, like you may or may not have an ADHD diagnosis, a person may not, but do you have these chaotic and twirly energies and experiences? Then I'm still talking to you. Like if you're thinking of a
Love
person who
that.
may or may not meet the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder according to the DSM-5 text revision, but a
Mhm.
person who like, oh wow, yeah, that's right. Like it's very helpful for us to have the boundaries. We have to decide what is the thing that's the most important to us. What are our higher values, hierarchy of values? What are our core beliefs? What is the thing that we feel is the most important for us and then now the children that we for whom we are responsible?
Mhm.
And then understanding sometimes you are able to say, please don't speak like that in front of my children. Um, I'd prefer not to talk about this. We don't do that thing. Please don't give my child this food. We can articulate some things. And sometimes those boundaries need to be internal, which is so funny because I was just telling my spouse about this, which is why he sent me. He's like, oh my gosh, this is what you were telling me about when he was going to have a conversation with somebody. And I was like, let's think about how you're going to want to articulate this with this person.
Mhm.
And he sent the Mel Robbins clip where it was like, if you tell a narcissist, and again, the global lowercase n overarching a boundary, they will often use that to pick at you. Well, you don't want me to talk politics. I'm going to talk about politics, and I'm going to talk about politics eightfold.
You just told them your trigger.
Hi. And so it's most important either way, whether it's a person who would be the happiest to hear what your boundaries were, because all they want to do is make sure that you feel comfortable in their space and they feel safe to be able to do the same for you. But the most important thing, again, is coming back to your hierarchy of values
Mm-hmm.
and articulating an internal boundary. If this happens, I'm gone. If this happens, I'm done. If this happens, this shifts. If this happens, this changes. And
Yes.
that's the best place for me to keep, like, I keep having these conversations with clients over and over again. Obviously, I have my own therapist. Like, that's the thing that I keep coming back to of like, what are my oh no no's? What are my red flags? What are my yellow flags? Like, and where do I feel like I need to try to go next without borrowing trouble, of course, because we don't want to put, we don't want to mind read in future and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
that the internal boundary and making sure that we feel confident in that, given the information we have on the day.
I think a lot of the internal boundaries that I have revolve around not taking things personal,
Go ahead.
especially when you live with somebody or you have a relationship with somebody who is emotionally immature and unavailable and unwilling to see any viewpoint other than their own. All you can really do is just take their actions as information
Mm-hmm.
to figure out, okay, what's the real trigger here? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not me. Like, why are you reacting this way? So that I can now establish that boundary within myself to know that if you're acting this way towards me, I already know it now has nothing to do with me and everything to
Mm-hmm.
do with you. So
I have
why
literally taught my children that's a you problem.
exactly? And it is true. It's like, and the
Yeah.
whole talk to the hand, like, no, you
Yes.
can, go figure that out.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, not taking it personally as an attack on me, especially as a daughter. And you're like, well, wait a second, I didn't. And you try to defend yourself, and you're like, well, I didn't do that. Or you're being told that something happened that didn't happen, or something you said that you didn't say, and like you're trying to defend yourself to somebody who has already made it up in their mind that anything that you say past this point really doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
because they want to have this reaction for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
She's feeling a certain way. She wants to react because that's how she was told to handle and regulate her emotions was to react. And I know now that I don't want to be that way, but I also don't want to give my power to somebody and
Yeah.
say your triggers and your actions now have an effect on me
Mm-hmm.
because they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to be mad and upset? You can have your space to be mad and upset. I don't want any part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And to just separate and draw that line, like you said, internally. Like, I made that decision for me. I didn't have this conversation with her. I mean, I've had conversations with her
Right.
that have been, if you continue to do these things or act this way, then I will have to, remove myself from the situation, and we can talk about it at a different time, come up with a more healthy communication style to talk about it at a time when both of us have had time to like really self-reflect on it, whatever the case may be. But being able to separate myself emotionally and say that somebody else's reactions don't have anything to do with me, especially when I know that I haven't warranted those reactions
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't instigated those reactions,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it a lot easier
Mm-hmm.
to see things for what they are
Mm-hmm.
instead of taking it personally as, well, what do I now need to do to fix it?
Right.
Because that's not my job.
Right.
It's no longer my job.
Oh, I
And
love that so much.
that's probably been the one thing that's helped me through all of this the most. Like the revelation of just being like, well, wait a second, I don't have to give a reaction to this. Not everything warrants a response.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything deserves my energy and my power and my attention.
Mm-hmm.
And because I believe that everything that you could think of and imagine exists, I don't want that space between us to exist in negativity. I don't want it.
Right.
Like, thank you, Bluey, for teaching me how to like
Oh,
throw my emotions into the ocean. Like,
I
I
tell you what, bless that show.
I love
First
that
of all,
show for
it's the
me.
only kids show that comes to mind. I'm sure somebody else could be like, "What? But you don't hate this show?" Whatever. Where that I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I don't mind. We can watch another one." Like
Yeah,
I enjoy
I
that
put it on,
show,
I
and it
put it
is
on repeat.
it's rooted in a lot of reality, and it is so helpful. I've actually referenced just this week. I referenced a Bluey episode.
Mhm.
I reference a Bluey episode probably once a month in a session, where I'm like, "Well, you know, like that Bluey episode where blah blah blah." Oh my gosh, you're right. Blah blah blah. Like it's amazing. Like, who are these humans who wrote this show? I can't. They're amazing.
They
But
really
yeah,
are.
and have you read the book Adult Parents of Children of it? No, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. I was not going to get there.
No, but I'm gonna write that down.
Okay, it's amazing. Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. That's the actual title, and
Okay.
I, it's amazing because our parents' generation did like therapy was so taboo. Therapy was like your, ableist word here, ableist word there. I'm not going to say on this show, like if you were in therapy. And now
You
it's
were,
just
you
like
were a
everyone,
hippie. You
yeah.
were a hippie if you were in there.
Also that, right? And so
Like if
not
you
for
cared about
nothing.
your emotions.
Yeah. And our parents were raised in the 50s and 60s
Mhm.
by and 70s by parents who were raised by parents in the third, like I
Mhm.
had a guest on once, and she specializes in mothers and daughters. I didn't know Mothers and Daughters International was a thing, but like she has extensive training. It's a great episode. Everyone go back in and watch it after you finish this one, of course.
Mhm.
I'll put it in the show notes. But um, and she talks about the idea of the importance of naming our ancestors. So like Great Aunt Gertrude and understanding Great Aunt Gertrude's journey that then led to how she treated this person in our life, that how that person treats us. Not as an excuse. Hurt people is not a thing. I can't say it enough. Hurt people is not a thing. Go get therapy.
Mhm.
And it does make it easier for us to be in a space of empathy and to hold a little bit of space of understanding from whence that comes when we're trying to navigate and maintain this relationship. Not maintain makes it sound like we would keep status quo, but like salvage a relationship, maintain with changes the relationship,
Mhm.
understand like, well, she behaves this way because she was taught this.
Right.
Again, only from a space of wanting to have an empathetic eye, be curious, not judgmental, understanding that we're not taking that shit with us.
Yeah.
Keep it over
It's
there. I'd love for you to get rid of it too. Go throw it in the ocean, Bluey. But either way, my daughter and I are not taking it with us.
yeah, it's our job as mothers to establish which of our generational trauma we want to carry forward. And I very much so, actually sitting outside self-reflecting like 2 days ago, had this again, trying to meditate. I'm not very good at it, but I'm trying. This thought of like, I don't want to take any of that. Like, you can keep it. Let me figure out how I can heal this
Mhm.
so that me and my daughter can move forward and she can start new with her own traditions and her own emotional availability and her own love and light and chaos and all things wild and free. Like, I want her to have a clean slate.
Oh my gosh, clean slate. Yes, I'm like
Yeah.
literally like the clean slate energy is just, I mean, my
And so I
spouse and I were
do, I
just,
think
oh,
it's
sorry,
our
go
job
ahead.
as moms. No, it's just our job as moms to provide that clean slate for our kids. And if you choose you don't want to do that, I mean that's fine, but is it for the betterment of yourself because you're unwilling to change and you like the pattern that you're in and the loop that you're on? Or is it for, the betterment of your kids that you want to have in these future generations, especially if you believe in reincarnation? Like, if you want to come back in a better life, let's make it better now. Like,
Yeah.
whatever your
Or just
belief
in
system
general,
is, but yes,
just
like,
choosing the
let's do
path
better.
as much as you can. And it's a privilege to be able to do this in a number of places in the world that are physically not safe right now, given the fact that we have the privilege of physical safety.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, we did go back to the getting abducted in a grocery
Yes,
store.
yes, but
Ah,
that's
but generally
yeah.
speaking, to be in a space of like, actually, I literally have a card. It says the moment you start acting like life is a blessing, it starts feeling like one. And I can't tell you enough how intentionally avoidant I am of forced positivity. But I love, this is called Spiritual AF, the card set that I have. And they do such a good job of like kind of throwing the toxically positive comment, like, yeah, girl, don't give no more fucks. You don't have fucks. Don't give your fucks there. And then it's like, no,
Mhm.
it's important to give fucks in certain places, but are
Yeah,
you
you have
giving
to
them in the
care.
places where you want? I got to make sure I put an E on this episode. Like making, so I just feel like it's very helpful to be in that space of like, I just want to be intentional about doing this thing. I want to make sure that I'm not putting anything on. Like, we are going to mess our kids up because we are
Of
human and we are
course. Of
imperfect.
course.
Of
But what we put our attention on is what's going to grow.
physics, right?
Yes.
And I like what you said about meditation because I wanted to put this out there for the listener. I meditation is hard, especially for those of us with a chaotic and twirly mind. But I also want to encourage people to think about like meditative versus
Mhm.
meditation. Like,
Yes. So I have to do it staring at the clouds.
I love that.
That's the
Right.
only way that I can get my brain to focus on something other
Mhm.
than what's going on
Yes. So
here.
you are
And
in a
if
meditative, you're being
yes.
intentional about the environment. Like I tell people, going for a walk without your phone, or certainly if you've got kids, like having the phone, but having it on, like not in your hand, not listening
Mhm.
to anything, just like sitting with your thoughts,
Being present. Yes.
being present, practicing being intentional about the thinking patterns. It's not the same as like sitting quietly with your eyes closed and your hands open for
I
40.
can't get that to work for me.
I think that I think we have a real, not you and I, but I think we globally, and then people just feel like, well, I'm never going to be able to do that, so I'm not even going to try. First of all, no one starts out an expert in the beginning, but also it can be something that is meditative. Put your feet in the grass. For those of you,
Yes, grounding
I'm
is
licensed in
so
New Mexico, so
therapeutic.
it's so funny when I say something about touching grass that they'll always make a joke about living in the desert. I'm like, ah, you're right. I'm on the AstroTurf now. But yeah, and that's so helpful too. Just being reflective, deciding are the choices that we're making coming from an internal voice or an external voice.
Right.
And very rarely is any one thing on one thing. Get me my neon sign. But
Mhm.
like making sure that we try to move the balance as far toward internal as possible. I am doing this because it's what is the most authentic to me,
Right.
not because somebody else told me at some point in my life that that's what I shoulda, coulda, woulda need to be doing.
Yeah, it's
Passing that
recognizing
energy
your
on to other
own
people.
patterns and figuring out which of those patterns is worth repeating. Like which
Yeah.
ones are triggering you, which ones are making you upset, which ones don't make you feel good. Let's get rid of those
Yes.
and replace it with something better. There's
Yes. And
always something.
allowing ourselves to take up the space to do so. Like
Yes.
it is a
Yeah.
privilege to be able to have any part of this conversation. And given the fact that many of us listening do have that privilege, use it, take up the space to say, I'm making a change. I'm going to live my most authentic life starting right freaking now
Mhm.
and going forward and making choices that serve me and my group of humans who are around me, whatever that looks like for you and your family.
Well, and I think for me, I also give those intrusive thoughts a name, and I say
Mm,
it in my brain. I say intrusive thoughts. You do not belong to me. You're not welcome here.
I love that.
And I say it over and over until it goes away. And eventually I do that so many times where I don't have that intrusive thought anymore. And if it does come up,
Mhm.
I say the thing. If I feel like a thought isn't something that makes me feel good or that isn't mine, I give it the name and I tell it to leave.
I love that. So, I mean, what you're describing is classic CB cognitive behavior therapy, where it's like you've got an automatic negative thought. We
Is
don't
that,
judge ourselves.
is it a positive thing or is that like, am I losing it?
No. I mean, we talk about automatic negative thoughts. I have a whole, I could seriously, I promise I'm going to let you go soon. But
No,
um,
you're fine. I'm good.
we have a whole, I used to work at a rehab facility and we had a
I
whole,
have so many questions for you.
so I'm just going to have you come back. We had a whole education piece called Stomping the Ants, the automatic negative thoughts. And people think that there's something wrong with them or broken because they have these thoughts. And it's like, it's an automatic negative thought. You are not alone. It's such a thing. It's
It's
been
not
studied,
yours.
longitudinally researched. This is what cognitive behavioral therapy is. It's much more than just the one sentence I'm about to say. I feel like I'm constantly like going behind and covering my tracks because I don't want someone to take a soundbite of something and be like, oh my gosh, look what Meg did. Someone let's get her license revoked, but I'm also whatever.
Yes.
But like that automatic negative thought, it was automatic. We're taking it, we're not judging it, we're assessing how much of it is real, we're making anxiety our friend. Can I make
Mhm.
a different choice based on this information? I will make that choice. every other part of this, what was it? Would you repeat the expression that you use? What do you say to your intrusive thoughts?
I say intrusive thoughts, you are not mine, you are not welcome here.
Right. And then from there, that is where we do get to make that's where we started making the choices. We did not make the choice to have the intrusive automatic negative thought. It's automatic. So we don't judge ourselves for it. Then we are aware of what we are thinking about, how much effort and energy we're putting into that. Then we are making sure that we're not allowing that to impact our emotions and then therefore our actions. And when we reflect, because we are humans and we are therefore not perfect, we say in a guilt is a good tool for change kind of way, not a shame, I am bad kind of thing. Like, ooh, next time I would like to do this differently because.
What is it? 21 times makes a new habit. So if you do something 21 times,
I don't know. I think I've heard that, or like 30 days, or I'm not really sure, but like I do love the fact that it's not like, yeah, do it twice, you've got it.
No, I think it is. I think it's like 21 times forms a new habit. So if you feel like you have a bad habit or a
Yeah.
bad thought or a way of thinking, if you recognize it, and like you said, then shift it
Hmm.
into the different thought that you want to replace it with 21 times, eventually you're not going to have that need to change it anymore. It's going to just become an automatic way of thinking.
You're retraining your neural pathways.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Your brain is so amazing. It can do
It's
anything.
okay. I'm going to let you go because I seriously think this could be a 2-hour conversation.
Yes, it
Um,
could.
and I appreciate you so much. I really appreciate
Thank
you
you so
being so
much.
vulnerable and sharing your experiences because I can guarantee you so many of my listeners just attached so just felt so seen by so many pieces of your
Oh,
story.
I'm
And
so
so
happy.
it's such a beautiful space to be able to help people to feel validated and normalized. And then also to kind of be like, I don't have the answers. If I had the answers, honey, I'd be living on a yacht in Mallorca with Beyonce. But
Exactly. If you've got
I,
answers, let me know.
yeah, I'm here to try. That's all we can do is just keep making choices based on the information we have right now and allowing ourselves to make changes based on new information.
And we didn't even get to the good stuff. We
I
just
know.
touched
I was like, we
we
didn't even get
touched
to
on
the
a part I
good news.
wasn't even prepared for. I did not know it was going to go in that direction, but you know what? That's the message that I guess needed to happen, so I'm fine with it.
I mean, if you don't, I'm sure you mind terribly. I would really love to have you back because I kept being like,
Yes.
okay, I've got to,
Mhm.
I am pretty decent at being present in the moment, but I'm also, as my job as the host, because I don't have a
Yeah.
producer just sitting here with me. He lives in Connecticut and he doesn't sit in on these. Um, I, I have to be like, okay, but we do eventually need and then we just kept going to the next thing in our beautiful
Yeah.
ADHD brains. And I was like, we're good. We'll just have to do it again.
Perfect. I would love to.
That's okay
And
with you?
yes, absolutely. I mean, and this is the first time I've ever even spoken about anything related to me
Yeah.
and wanting to tell my story and somehow get it out there with the hopes that it can help somebody.
Yes. So absolutely. I will just, as soon as we get done, we'll book another session and
Of
we'll
course.
get it on the calendar and we'll have another podcast chat and it'll be great. Okay. So is there like a charity that you would like to put on out there? Is there like, where can people find you if you would like people to find you? If you'd rather they don't find you, don't tell me your Instagram. Like, I always like to give a space here of like, where would you like to direct the people to go next? What do you think is something that could be helpful?
Um, well, I actually did not. I was not prepared for that. So I'll
That's fine.
be
No, you're good. That could be the answer
um,
then. Like I said, that can totally be the answer. Oftentimes
but
when I
I
have
mean,
somebody,
I only have Instagram. I
yeah.
don't have anything else.
Oh, but if you don't, but if it's like your personal page, you don't have to. Oftentimes I
Yeah.
have people on who are like, yes, please go read my book and buy it here. And oh, yes, you can find
I
my
mean,
website.
that is a goal I'm trying to manifest. I would love to write something eventually or
Yes.
start like a different page eventually. I just don't have one yet. I
Yes.
was kind of dipping my toes in the water with this today to see how I did to really
I
determine if
love
like
that. And
this was something that I could do.
I know at your birthday we had talked about maybe like you starting a blog and whatnot. So
Mhm.
when you start that, I will definitely do extra separate posts
Oh, I would love that.
um, and that send people there. So everyone keep your eyes out for that. And I will have you back on. So thank you again. What a treat. I'm so excited. I will definitely have you back on. And for all of the listeners out there, be curious, not judgmental. And thank you for hanging out with us again here on the Perinatal Podcast. See
Thank you
you.
so much. I